think I'm going to have to start.
Good.
Yep.
Figure something out, even if it's like, I might
Yeah, AKA I'm just play and stop.
really hoping it doesn't come to that.
And the less important.
If it does,
How are you doing?
just however it
What did you think? Yeah, I didn't know if you were talking about like his work or but it
Is this like a, I thought you were doing
He's moderating.
not moderating, just like handling.
Just
it.
camera?
And like I'm like open the door.
I've heard, I know a couple of them. It's just like, you know,
Yeah.
just get.
Yeah, just we'll hit it really hard, smash it. That's perfect. That's just what we need.
You would wait for someone to
Yeah, I'll try and figure it out. So it's not
I would like to welcome you all here. My name is Willeman, and I'm going to be moderating this panel discussion. You'll find in page 9 of your program, you can find details about this, and you'll see that the title of this, which I assume you already know, is The Essence of Being Human. And knowing myself and knowing the rest of these panelists as I do, we're eminently unqualified for this. It's a little bit of a joke. They laugh. Only a little bit. So what's meant by that, as you can see, really has to do with psychology, just contemporary psychology, complement faith. All sorts of questions that go along with this issue of faith and psychology, the gospel and psychology, Christianity, and psychology. And each of these people that we have here on the panel have some experience with that. Let me begin by giving you a little bit more of an introduction to myself. I'm a local pastor, so I deal with this on a pastoral counseling level in a church setting, Christ Redeemer Church here in town. And the other panelists that we have here are, to my right, I have Rich Lopez, who is presently a graduate student. You can see this in your program on page 9. He's presently a graduate student in psychology and brain sciences here at Dartmouth College, also a graduate at Princeton University, and as well as was a research assistant at Columbia for a while before coming up here. And immediately to my left here, I have Dr. Robert Humphreys, who is a retired psychiatrist, 35 years working in the field of psychiatry, graduate of Wheaton College in Illinois, as well as Columbia, with the medical degree in Columbia, correct? And then on my far end here, I have the great Alasdair Groves, as he himself is a Dartmouth grad, right? And before Dartmouth grad, and you were the head of the New England chapter of, I suppose that's a fair way to say it, of CCEF, which is the Christian Counseling Education Foundation, right? And so he's a local counselor, and so each of these have come from a little bit different perspective and a little bit different experiences in this field. But what we'll do is I'll begin by asking some questions of them, just to kind of prime the pump. But I want to be encouraging you to be thinking about what sort of questions you might want to bring to the table as well, and we'll open it up after a little while to take questions from all of you. Let me begin by asking the question, and any of you can jump in, or all of you can, what initially drew you or interested you in the field of psychology or brain science? I mean, perhaps another way to ask the question, what is it that interests you in being a part of this panel? So you kind of take that either way.
I'll take it both ways. Why I chose to be a psychiatrist was pretty easy. My father was a physician. My uncle was a physician. I thought that was a pretty cool profession. I got to medical school, and I found out that the only field that really interested me was psychiatry. So it's kind of a no-brainer from there. How I came to be interested in the panel, I think, has maybe more relevance. In a way, that's obvious too. I grew up in an evangelical Christian home. I went to an evangelical Christian college. In medical school, after medical school, I did my residency at Mount Sinai, which at that time in the mid-60s was very psychoanalytic and Freudian in its orientation. I think that can tell you right there that I was wrestling with the interface between secular psychology and Christian faith. Another factor that became important at the time was that I, in medical school, had a period of self-doubt and depression, and decided to deal with that by going into psychoanalysis, which was very much in vogue at the time. And I got help through that I had not been able to get, got relief, I didn't get through an active and diligent Christian life and devotional life. And that influenced me quite a bit, and actually led me away from my faith for a while. But I came back to faith, and I've been I guess, a happy and committed Christian for the last 30 years and more.
Great.
So interestingly, the respective trajectories of my psychology interest and my faith, they've been synchronized. So when I was 18, I came to faith, and that was also the time I got interested in psychology and neuroscience. So for me, it's been a matter of learning more about ultimate reality, just like we were hearing a few minutes ago in the keynote lecture. So for me, I want to seek out what's real, what's true, and Christianity as a worldview helps me integrate things, but I think psychology and neuroscience are uniquely poised to answer questions about human nature in kind of a very specific, intentional way. And I'll get into this more later, but I think psychology and neuroscience, in terms of the data and the findings, are inherently neutral, but how to make sense of them, how to integrate what we're learning with just a broader perspective on, and even getting into the realm of moral knowledge that we were just hearing about. That's what I strive to do in letting my faith and my scientific training in psychology come together now.
I grew up in a Christian home, got here to Dartmouth, got involved with Christian fellowships, ended up staying around and doing a couple of years on staff with the Navigators. Part of what you do if you're on staff with a Christian organization on campus is you do some fundraising, so you think about what would be helpful to tell people to make them want to see this as valuable and donate money. And one of the things that I remember us saying on a number of fundraising conversations was 20% of students at Dartmouth College will seek out counseling in the 4 years from Dick's House for depression. That's just depression, that's just Dick's House. And these are students at Dartmouth College, one of the best colleges in the world, a great experience, best 4 years of your life, all these sorts of things. If there is that level of troubledness in a place like this, the need for a deep response, an answer that goes deep for the human soul is pretty hard to argue. And so that led me to eventually seminary, where I studied theology with an emphasis on applied practical theology, or what we might call counseling. And I came out of that with an incredibly deep conviction that the scriptures really do hold out the deepest answers, that our worldview, our understanding of whether that glass door is open or closed, these are not simply sufficient for spiritual matters and telling you about how to have a quiet time or showing up at a certain building on Sunday morning, but that this is in fact the controlling paradigm for our life. So the question for me, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not trained in psychology. The question for me is pastoral care, the matters of the soul. Where are the deepest answers? I believe they're in Scripture. How do we understand them? How do we apply them? And how does that engage with culture, obviously heavily influenced by the many psychologies, hundreds of different psychological perspectives that are out there?
All right, let me ask another question and kind of take these things a little bit deeper, and that is that the practice of psychology